Greetings, fellow Whovians, and welcome to Timey Wimey Review, where the Doctor Who 60th anniversary celebrations continues as I look back at the Doctor Who 20th anniversary special, The Five Doctors, originally broadcast in the US on November 23rd, 1983, but here in the UK that was originally broadcast on BBC One on the 25th of November 1983. Yes, you've heard that right. The United States got to broadcast The Five Doctors first. And the reason for that? Well, as the good doctor once said, I'll explain later. But just in case you don't know the plot, whilst the Fifth Doctor, Tegan and Turlough were all having a well-earned rest on the planet the Eye of Orion, the Fifth Doctor experienced an out-of-body attack, as his previous incarnations are being taken out of time and placed in the Death Zone on the Doctor's home planet of Gallifrey. Also joining them in the Death Zone is some of the Doctor's most deadliest enemies, including the Yeti, a Dalek, Cybermen, and even the Master, who has been sent by the Time Lords to help free the Doctor in exchange for a full pardon and a new regeneration cycle. The Doctors must successfully navigate the Death Zone to find out who has been using the time scoop and why, so they can all go home back to their proper time and place. I want this review to be pretty much how I feel that this story was intended to be, a celebration, because it was obviously celebrating the show's 20th anniversary. It's also been nearly 40 years since this special was first broadcast, and also it's been 15 years since this DVD was released as part of the celebration of the 25th anniversary of the Five Doctors back in 2008. So quite a lot of wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff to get your head round there. But let's start by going back to 1983, where really it was quite a successful season, I would say, of Doctor Who. That was season 20 of classic Doctor Who, where we had returning villains in each subsequent story, plus a Doctor Who festival being held at Longleat, which has been dubbed pretty much as the Doctor Who's version of Woodstock. On the DVD, they briefly mentioned about the Longleat Doctor Who Festival and saying that it was an amazing time, very busy, but had lots of guest stars, lots of costumes and outfits and reruns of classic Doctor Who stories. But when I digged in and did a little bit of research on my own, a lot of people who were actually there saying, oh my God, it was horrendous queues. It was very unorganized. The BBC totally underestimated the amount of people that were going to be joining in on that weekend. I very much wish I had my own TARDIS so I can go back in time and see what it was like to be at the Longleat Doctor Who Festival, or exhibition as it was called. I know there's some videos out there. I need to try and track one down so I can take a proper look for myself. But let me know in the comments below if you ever went to that Doctor Who exhibition in Longleat and what it was like to be there. But after all those celebrations, there was going to be an actual special episode of Doctor Who, or special story of Doctor Who, I should say, to celebrate its actual 20th birthday, entitled The Six Doctors. Yes, that's right, The Six Doctors, to have been written by Doctor Who writing legend Robert Holmes. I read a bit of a synopsis of The Six Doctors, where basically they were going to replace the first Doctor with a robotic cyborg, I think created by the Cybermen, and it was called Dr. Will. And kind of, I think it was supposed to have been the first Doctor in disguise to try and trap the other Doctors and get all their incarnations and basically duplicate them, kind of like what the Daleks did in Resurrection of the Daleks. So basically turn them all into cyborg for their own evil gains. Yeah, obviously that didn't meant to be. There was a part in this sort of synopsis that I read where Dr. Will was tumbling down this cliff with all these springs bursting out of him. How they were going to do that with 1983 budgets, I have no idea. But obviously that didn't happen. That got scrapped. I think there was just basically too many demands for Robert Holmes to sort of deal with. There was like, thanks, but no thanks. And luckily, they turned to another legend of Doctor Who, Terence Dick, to write the Five Doctors. Terence Dick was assigned to write the Five Doctors for a 90-minute special and had a ton of shopping lists. So it had to have so many elements into this, including how to write for the First Doctor and who's going to be the First Doctor. Well, stepped in Richard Herndell, and I thought he did a great job as the First Doctor, because obviously you can never ever replace the original, which is William Hartnell. But for me, Richard's performance was kind of like, he definitely looked the part of the First Doctor. He didn't quite sound the part of him. He was more the sort of softer nature of the First Doctor, in my opinion. Even though he did have some sort of snappy retorts. I love the first scene where he sees Tegan and Turlough, and Tegan goes, "What are you doing? Who are you? What are you doing here?" And I think Richard sort of retorts, more to the point, "What are you doing in my TARDIS? It's TARDIS. What? Oh, good grief!" I liked all that. I like that sort of definitely that older sort of gentleman, bit sort of more gruffer when he wants to be, but kind of more of a softer tone of William Hartnell. And if it wasn't for Richard, we wouldn't have David Bradley taking over as the First Doctor. So I say thanks for Richard for giving a good performance and a solid performance as the First Doctor. I didn't realise actually that when I was researching for this review that Richard sadly passed away a year after this was first broadcast. So that's really, really sad that he didn't get to sort of, well, at least he was part of Doctor Who. And yeah, a very accomplished stage and television actor by that time. But yeah, it was sad that he passed away a year after this first broadcast. Let's also address the elephant in the room, or the slight controversy, which was Tom Baker's appearance in the Five Doctors, because one minute he was in and he was not, and then he was in again and definitely then pulled out. And there's been lots of sort of reasons and speculations as to why he didn't make an appearance, or why he didn't turn up for the photo shoot, and they had to use a Madame Tussauds mannequin as part of the photo shoot of the Five Doctors. My take on it is I could understand why he didn't make an appearance, because he wasn't that far removed from being in Doctor Who, after 7 long years, so I can see why he decided not to make an appearance. And I don't think it damaged really the story that much. I thought Terence Dick did a really good job of basically putting him in one part and then taking him out in another part, and basically trapping him in some kind of time bubble. And I thought it was quite clever on the BBC's part to use the unused footage of Sharda at the time, because obviously that story was scrapped. That's a story for another day, my fellow Whovians. But yeah, it was good to use that footage of Sharda, which was at the time still new material. So it kind of edits in quite naturally, quite well, to trap him in that time bubble. So yeah, you still had that, all right, in a detached way, but you still had Tom Baker, you still had an essence of Fourth Doctor being in the Five Doctors. Yeah, it would have been very interesting to see if he were to be in the Five Doctors, how he would have fit in with the other incarnations of the Doctor. And it's kind of a bit like when David Tennant sort of was left, and that's kind of a similar time as well, sort of thinking about it. But again, different time period as well. Personally, I think I don't blame Tom Baker for not appearing in Doctor Who. Whether he regrets it not being in the Five Doctors, shall I say, that's another one to open to debate. But let me know in the comments below, what's your take on Tom Baker's appearance / non-appearance in the Five Doctors. As for the rest of the incarnations, I'll start with the third and second Doctors. Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee, they were just as if they've never left. We saw that with Patrick Troughton when he made an appearance in the Three Doctors, but after that, that's another 10 years have gone since the Three Doctors and the Five Doctors, and yeah, he just slipped into that role again, never missing a beat. John Pertwee as well, never missing a beat. Still looked pretty much like the three Doctors and the second, the third Doctor and the second Doctor. So yeah, absolutely brilliant for that. Obviously, interacting with the fifth Doctor, that worked quite well. It's a shame they didn't get more sort of time to interact with each other. It kind of had like pairings, and that was kind of clever pairings as well for Terence Dicks. Again, rumors about the kind of remit of from John Nathan Turner of let's keep the Doctors separate until the end because we don't want any bust ups or egos or arguments from the lead actors. But from the DVD, Pete Davidson said there wasn't any sort of egos or bust-ups or arguments at all. But I can understand why it was structured that way. And I think, again, Terence Dicks did a really good job of kind of keeping to that remit. There's a lot for these Doctors to do. I did like the first Doctor and the fifth Doctor. They were pretty much solving the mystery as to why they were there and who's brought them there and how they're ever going to get home or get back to their proper time streams. And obviously the first Doctor going off into the Dark Tower, and the fifth Doctor being transported off to the Gallifreyan Citadel to sort of figure out that mystery on that side as well. I also like that the second Doctor, they had to, and the Brigadier, they was sort of taking the low road as they sort of navigated the Death Zone. And the third Doctor was pretty much the action hero, like John Pertwee was in his era, having to drive Bessie through the Death Zone, taking on the Cybermen as well. His first appearance with the Cybermen. He didn't get to do that in his tenure. So yeah, there's lots of little moments like that I felt that Terence Dick sort of had in the back of his mind of like, right, I'll have the third Doctor with the Cybermen because we didn't really do that in my era, and we'll have the first Doctor. He'll sort of have a chat with the Master because we didn't have that before. So yeah, really good stuff from Terence Dicks. And the rest of returning companions, they never missed a beat as well, and it just shows how much they loved their time on Doctor Who. Even just like the cameo appearances such as Mike Yates and Liz Shaw and K9, they knew there were only tiny parts, but they wanted to join in with this celebratory fun and yeah, still put up a full performance. Poor Liz Shaw having to do the stop him. I thought she did fine. Again, DVD mentioned that John Nathan Turner was a bit, she's not going to say it like that, is she? I thought she did really good. I thought there was no issues at all with that one. And also the cameo of Jamie and Zoe when they're confronting the second Doctor and the sort of phantoms type of thing, and that obviously caused a bit of a continuity error. And I like that the fans, the Whovians, created their own sort of imaginary season 6B of it was part of the Time Lord sort of master plan, and the Doctor was kind of working for the Time Lords before he regenerated into the third Doctor, which kind of spills into the sort of timeless child story arc as well, and the division that was part of Doctor Who Flux. So yeah, it was, yeah, okay, all started from a continuity error, but it still doesn't bother my enjoyment for the Five Doctors, and if anything, sort of enhanced a full-on sort of story arc for season 6B and the second Doctor. Like I said, for the returning companions, they never missed a beat. I thought the Brigadier and the second Doctor, they made a great double act. Nicholas Courtney, again, all right, he was in season 20 of Doctor Who in Mordering Undead, but again, still a massive gap from his last performance or last appearance in Doctor Who till the 20th anniversaries. Same for Sarah Jane Smith. Again, she did do the K9 and Company special, which kind of made that episode, that special, canon as well. So that was a nice little twist and a wink and a nod from Terence Dicks as well. I don't know where Sarah Jane was running away from when she got captured in Time Scoop and just sort of appeared, like sort of running off. Oh no, there's a fence in the way. Fine, I'm captured, fine, whatever. And I thought she did a good job when she had to be sort of poor poor Elizabeth Sladen roll down this slight incline, and she made it quite dramatic. I thought, yeah, again, it didn't look that bad. That scene where she's being rescued by the Third Doctor, and again, quite clever that you when you're doing these celebrations or this celebration and this massive shopping list, yes, you probably would argue that Sarah Jane Smith is more affiliated with the Fourth Doctor, but she was with the Third Doctor originally, so it was nice to have that returning pairing. I would have to say that Tegan and Taylor really didn't have that much to do apart from make the tea. If you know, you know. But I'd say the one that really got a bit of a bum rap from a returning companion standpoint is Susan. I thought Caroline Ford looked great. You could instantly tell that it is Susan. All right, yes, a bit older, but it's definitely Susan. But yeah, it's just really odd that the doctors didn't have anything much to say to her. Like the first Doctor introducing to the Fifth Doctor. Oh, this is my granddaughter Susan. Yes, I know. It's like, of course he knows. It's his granddaughter, and it's the same as like the first and the second Doctors. They should have had something there to say. All right, didn't have to sort of go into sort of details of being on Earth and being married to David, but there should be something of like I've not thought about there's not been one day since I haven't thought about you, and I will return. None of that. I do think Caroline Ford does need to return at some point in Doctor Who's future. You know, she still looks like Susan. There's just no change in her. The voice is still the same. Obviously she made that brief appearance in Dimensions in Time for the 1993 30th anniversary of Doctor Who. Check that out on the Time Wimey YouTube channel for my review for that. But yeah, she's definitely underused here. That's my sort of main nitpick for the Five Doctors. But she definitely needs to return in modern Doctor Who at some point soon. The other special guest stars put in some great performances. Really liked Philip Latham as Barusa, President Barusa. Yeah, I won't go into sort of too much spoilers with that particular character, but yeah, I liked his official sort of presence and his sort of reasonings behind what he did. I also liked Paul Jericho making his return as the Castellan, last seen in Arc of Infinity, and there's always that famous line for him. I wonder if he's had to write that in when he's been to different Comic Cons of no, not the Mind Probe. I thought again there was obviously he was apparently there was problems of him trying to how he should say not the Mind Probe. I think if I was going to do a take on it, I would sort of just go into like insane hysterics. Something like, no, not the Mind Probe, anything but the Mind Probe, no, something like that. So I think I might put on X like my own video version of how I would say that line. And if you would like to join me, my fellow Whovians, do check that out. And I would love to see your versions of no, not the Mind Probe. Let's talk about some villains, shall we? I'll start with Anthony Ainley returning as the Master. And yeah, I thought it was a good use for the Master in this story, having to basically help the Doctors, obviously for his own gains of a full pardon and a new regeneration cycle. But I like that he tried his best to help, and the Doctors was like, nope, don't believe you, not trusting you, get lost, basically. To the point where the Doctor kind of screwed the Master over. There was the Fifth Doctor talking to the Master, and the Master trying to plead his case, interrupted by a squadron of Cybermen, and the Doctor managed to make his escape by using the transmats that the Master was given, and yeah, left the Master to his own devices, and could have got killed by the Cybermen, and having to sort of trick his way into align himself with the Cybermen to navigate the Death Zone, and having to defend himself. And I did like at the end where he's like, I tried to help you, but you didn't know, you didn't want to know, so I'm going to kill you anyway. Killing you once was not good enough. I'm going to kill you 5 times over. So, yeah, a little bit pantomime towards the end, but yeah, a great appearance by the Master for Anthony Ainley. I'll briefly mention the Yeti again. That having that little nostalgic trip, it just felt like that's a second Doctor sort of villain there involving the Yeti. A nice little sort of um, side plot for the second Doctor to deal with, and the first Doctor believing that he was on Skaro with Susan taking on the Dalek. There was at one point mentioning that was going to have no Daleks, and Terence Dick had to fight to at least let me have one Dalek to play with. So yeah, that definitely needed an appearance in Doctor Who. For the 5 Doctors, shall I say. But yeah, definitely you can see why they used the Cybermen a lot. Easier to sort of navigate for the outside locations, for the Death Zone. It was great to see the Cybermen again after their successful return in Earthshock. David Banks being the cyber leader, and Mark Hardy being the cyber lieutenant. And what I liked about the 5 Doctors is part of this was funded by an Australian television network, I believe, and it clearly shows because the scoring for this for the 5 Doctors by Peter Howell is amazing. It's probably one of the best Doctor Who scores out there. So if you've got a soundtrack of it, I highly recommend that you do listen to the full soundtrack. It's amazing. But yeah, the special effects for this really still holds up. Particularly, I like the look of the time scoop from the original transmitted version. It's just like this black sort of trapezoid of death. Really, I was sort of looking at it when I was rewatching this for the 5 Doctors for this review, and it does look quite terrifying, especially when you see the Doctors trapped in that sort of weird sort of kind of face that they're pulling, as if they're from the Phantom Zone. But yeah, the effects, the practical effects as well as the special effects, do definitely hold up 40 years later. Particularly the stunt effects for the Cybermen versus the Raston warrior robots. That that scene is just I can't believe it now these days. It's quite violent, I would say, for Doctor Who, where this warrior robot with its armaments just kind of placed inside its hand, I think, kind of being like basically a robotic T-Rex. It sort of relies on movement and then jumps like lightning. But yeah, when those Cybermen came up, taking on this one robot, they did not stand a chance. They just got absolutely slaughtered, and the screeching that these Cybermen were were doing when they got damaged and hit. One of the arms gets flown off, and you see it sort of moving around, and the cyber leader getting smashed by the warriors' armaments and absolutely vomiting out this white bile. That is what I was how if you was a young child watching this now and hearing all these Cybermen getting slaughtered, it's pretty intense stuff for Doctor Who, in my opinion, but amazing stuff to watch. There are 3 versions of the 5 Doctors to choose from. You've got the original transmitted version, which is on BritBox and BBC iPlayer as part of the Whoniverse. You've got the special edition from 1995, which is on this DVD. And you've also got the updated special effects version, which has just recently been released as part of the season 20 Doctor Who Blu-ray set. And yeah, I'll just kind of have my little thoughts on them. So my original version that I've watched and grown up with as a kid was the 1995 version that was released on video and is on this DVD, and that's kind of my definitive version of Doctor Who to watch, mainly for the extended scenes that they use for like the Eye of Orion and the Death Zone, and just little sort of just little like extra bits of dialogue and extra sort of like scenes to show the Gallifreyan Citadel. That is just, it just flows more naturally to me than the original transmitted version. It just feels like a bit sort of tightly knitted sort of version, so I can tell what's been cut out, and I kind of miss those scenes, having been used to the 1995 extended version so much. And I like the updated effects from the 95 version as well. The one thing I do say from the season 20 Blu-ray version of the effects that I have noticed was the time scoop. I like the sort of more solid effects of the time scoop. Definitely more in keeping to the original transmitted version of the Trapezoid of Death, Black Trapezoid of Death. Because the 95 version does kind of look like a swirly bogey flying around, capturing the Doctors and his companions. I would say I do prefer the 95 edit of Tom Baker or the Fourth Doctor being released from the time scoop from the 95 version rather than the original transmitted version. It just kind of looked a bit cheap to me when he's sort of running in. He's got his scarf trapped in the TARDIS, and the TARDIS doors were wobbling, and I didn't quite like the TARDIS light just being like a flashing blue light, something that you get from like a police car or something. I'd rather had that version where you just have them sort of flip reverse and still rowing down the river. That looked better. I kind of like the lightning bolts when the Sidemen was getting slaughtered in that checkered square thing, similar to what happened in Death to Daleks, rather than the sort of green lasers being used. Same as the thunderbolts as well. But the most notable one, which I know they've reverted back for the Blu-ray release, is the voice of Rassilon. I prefer the deeper, sort of slower sounding voice of Rassilon. This is the game of Rassilon. You know, that sounded more authoritative to me rather than this is the game of Rassilon. It just, yeah, the higher pitch version just doesn't quite sit well with me. I've got used to it more over time, but I prefer the more sort of lower voiced commanding one. Same as the cyber leader. Obviously David Banks being the cyber leader, but there was like, it seems like there was two squadrons for this story. It wasn't quite well explained on this one. So you had like Squadron 1 going to the Death Zone, navigating the Death Zone, and going to the Dark Tower, where the second squadron, they were there to basically destroy the TARDIS. Why not? That's what they were there for. And the cyber leader used for the for that squad to destroy the TARDIS. No offense to the actor, but that voice was kind of like a excellent detonate. It just didn't quite sound like a cyber leader to me. Yeah, after that little ramble that I just had there, I prefer the 1995 version as my kind of definitive one. But I can understand why they did the enhanced version for the original transmitted release. Why would you do a redo of the 1995 version? So I like it with all the effects, all the extended scenes, I should say. But yeah, let me know in the comments below which version is your definitive version of the Five Doctors. Before I wrap up and give my rating for the Five Doctors, if this, how it was released back in 1983, happened now, this would have been an absolute disaster for the BBC. So as I've mentioned earlier, this was originally broadcast in the US on the actual anniversary, 20th anniversary of Doctor Who, which is no brainer. Now, the reason why it was released a couple of days later, broadcast on BBC One, as it was because it was part of the BBC Children in Need telethon. Now, back then, obviously, no real sort of internet, so that wasn't a major issue for that. But it would have been interesting if anyone had like any telephone calls from the US to the UK of like, oh my god, this happened and that happened, and oh my god, you're gonna have to wait and see and enjoy it for your own eyes. But I can understand why it was part of the BBC Children in Need celebrations, because it's a worthy cause, and Doctor Who has been part and parcel of Children in Need throughout the decades as well. So yeah, I'm fine with that. No issues whatsoever. But what was a bit of a whoops mistake was that the Target novelization of the Five Doctors was in the shops for you to buy before it actually got transmitted. Thankfully, that's not going to happen for the 60th anniversary episodes, but I would be very fascinated if you actually did read it before the televised version came out. Were you one of those people that did that? Or did you, go, no, I'm going to wait for the televised version and then purchase the Target book? So let's wrap this up. I'm going to give the Five Doctors a TARDIS rating of 8 out of 10. Yes, you got a few continuity errors and a few effects that you might or might not like, but honestly, it's still a great story. I had so much fun. I do have a lot of fun watching this story. I do watch it quite a lot. It's just an easy watch, great 90 minutes, fast paced as well. It doesn't there's no real dull bits, I would say, in this 90-minute special. And I thought Terence Dick's done a fantastic job of doing a script, having all these doctors, all these companions, all these villains, and having to sort of have the shopping list of it must have this, it must have that, it's got to have this remit, it's got to be sort of structured in this way. And it not only does it hold up, it does work well. It's quite a solid story. I wouldn't say it's like one of your out and out classic, maybe Doctor Who. That's up to debate. And it's something that I would probably not recommend for someone that's new to Doctor Who to go into first. I would say it's just a celebratory story. That's what it is for me. That's what it should be. And I hope that's kind of what Terence Dicks went for, because if he did, he absolutely nailed it. It has those nostalgia pops for seeing all these doctors back, the second, third, and first doctors coming back. Particularly the third doctor having some nice little one-liners like reverse the polarity of the neutron flow. Second doctor saying, oh, you had this place redecorated, I don't like it. Honestly, there's so much sort of nostalgia buzz, not only probably then, but even now, watching it back 40 years later. I think you're just going to have a good time watching it. Please do check out The Five Doctors, which you can do now on BBC iPlayer as part of the Whoniverse. It's also on the streaming app BritBox. But for me, if you do have a copy, or if you haven't got a copy of this DVD, do check it out, do purchase it. I think most of the extras are now also on the season 20 Blu-ray release of classic Doctor Who. But really, I absolutely loved this DVD. It's probably my favourite releases from the Doctor Who collection over the years, particularly all the extras that are on there, which I think, like I said, are pretty much on the, I'm assuming are on the classic season 20 Blu-ray release. I just had so much fun watching it, and all the extras that are on there, all the documentaries that are on there, and special features. I can't believe it's 15 years old now. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. I do pop it on quite a lot over the years and just chill out and watch it. I just absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts to The Five Doctors. Is this your favourite multi-doctor story, or is this just one of your favourite Doctor Who stories of all time? As I mentioned earlier, The Five Doctors was part of the broadcast for the BBC Children in Need telethon back in 1983, and I purposely wanted this review to be released as part of BBC Children in Need Week for the Timey Wimey Review YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description below for the BBC Children in Need website. It is a very worthy cause. I do recommend that you check it out. Donate if you can, or at least check how you can be involved in BBC Children in Need. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you have, please like, share and subscribe. Hit the cloister bell for more notifications. Come say hello and follow me on Facebook and X, and do check out my other fantastic Doctor Who content on the Timey Wimey Review TikTok page and right here on the Timey Wimey Review YouTube channel. But please don't forget to check out the BBC Children in Need website. And as a good doctor once said, after all, that's how it all started.